Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jennifer, and I'll be your moderator for today's presentation. If you have any questions, you want to make sure to enter them into the question box with as much information as possible so we can make sure to get you the information that you're looking for. The webinar will be available on our website shortly after at windwardsoftware.com/webinars, where you can view all of our archives. Today, Annabelle will be presenting us with a webinar on invoice penny rounding. So without further ado, let's get started.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. This is Annabelle again. I'll be the presenter for today's webinar regarding invoice penny rounding. So this webinar will discuss how to enable and properly set up penny rounding in the system, especially in those countries that no longer have pennies. So, all right. Let's proceed. So the invoice penny rounding. So this feature is what I've said. This is for countries that don't have pennies, so you just need to round. So if you tender an invoice as a cash, the invoice is rounded by adding a rounding part to the invoice to make it round to the nearest nickel or whatever value you pick. So other tender types such as check, credit card, debit card do not round. So this is only available for cash. So for the setup, to enable this feature, we just need to follow the steps below. First is to navigate to the setup wizard, invoice setup, invoice tender rounding. I'll just show you later on. And the next is to set the cash tender rounding to 5, which is no pennies, or 10, no nickels or pennies, 25, no nickels, pennies, or dimes. Additionally, you can check the always round down checkbox to ensure you never overcharge the customer. So this is like the screen that you can see, wherein you can set the rounding that you wanted to set. It's either 5, 10, 25, or whatever number that you wanted to set. So next is, after that, the next step is to create a new part with the part number rounding. So this is recommended to be part on its own category, and it should be a non-inventory category. And we will be posting a separate ledger number, and the part description can be of your choosing. So the cost or retail price do not matter, so you can just leave it blank. And so this part will be added to the invoice if required when you tender out as a cash. So the rounding part will be the one that will be added to the invoice if required when you tender it as a cash. And if you re-edit the invoice, this line zeroes out so that you don't get multiple penny adjustments. So like, let's say you're done with the rounding. I mean, we're done with the finalizing the invoice and there is a rounding. When you close it and you open it, the rounding part has zero quantity. It's actually because the system don't want you to get multiple rounding part numbers on the invoice. We just need to add the quantity again and close the invoice. So I will just show you guys on the live demonstration later on. And this function currently works on invoices, so it does not work on payments or like payments on accounts. So the rounding will only work on when you do or pay from the invoices, so not from the payments on account. And to turn off this feature, like let's say for example, you no longer wanted to use the tender rounding or the penny rounding, you can just set the cash tender rounding to 0 or 1. So now let's proceed with the live demonstration. So let me just open my System 5 right here. So to set it up, we go to System Tools, Setup Wizard. And then we go to the Invoice Setup. And let's go Invoice Setup. And we'll need to scroll down and we will look for the Invoice Tender Rounding. So this is right here where we will set the rounding. So like, let's say for example, we set it to 5. So, okay. So as a test, if it's 3, 0.03, it will go 0.05. So the next step is we will need to create a rounding part number, but before doing so, we will need to create a category of its own for the rounding part number, and it should be a non-inventory category. So we'll go to the categories and category setup. We'll click on the category. So let me just add it under others, subcategory. So I actually added one. So this is the rounding. I created a category rounding, and it's a non-inventory, and then you can either set your own ledgers if you will, and then you just need to click on create ledgers to create the income and cost if the ledger is not existing yet. So once the category has been created as a non-inventory, so we'll just close that. The next step will be to create the part number uh, or the part with the part number rounding. So we'll go to inventory and purchases, inventory, new item. We'll select that category, which is the rounding as well. I name it rounding. Um, Let me name the part. So we'll create, the part number will be rounding. And next, all right, so we'll just add the description. Any description will do, but I will just add it rounding as well. And you don't actually need to add costs or pricing. So, all right, so it has already been added. Okay, so the part number, so the setup has been complete. So the next step is to test. So let me just create a an invoice. So let's see, let's just do an accounts receivable. Let me just find one of the customers right here. And after that, let me just add a part and let's change the price. Okay, let me just add a part right here. Okay, so it's 450. Let's just change the price to something like 450.99. Okay, so the balance is now 507.36. So when you go to tender, the rest of the tender, it doesn't actually round. So when you go to cash, so it actually changed to, because we changed it to 5, so it now changed it to that. So if you tender it, so it showed there's a balance of 0.01, so that's okay. When you finish the sale, close it. As you can see, when you finish the sale, it becomes 0 because it adds the rounding part number. So let's just edit the invoice. So when you edit the invoice, so as you can see, the balance is 0. So this is where it rounded. So when we edit the invoice, as what I've said earlier, it will zero it out. There's the rounding part number right here. It will be zeroed out because the system would not like you to create multiple like adjustments. So it showed a balance of 1 again in there. So you just need to add it back. Let me just take a look right here. Oh, it should be -1, I believe. Okay. Yeah, because it's -1 because the amount that it rounded to is lower. So okay, so we exit, and then there you go. So we create another test. If you wanted to change the, like let's say for example, there's another option we're in. You don't want to overcharge your customers, so you can have the option to always round down. So let's go back to the invoice setup and the invoice sender rounding. So we have this option always round down. So like let's say we change this to, we don't want it to 5, like we wanted it to is 10 or 25 or whatever is you're choosing. So okay, so round down, so let's just leave it as 5. Okay, so it's 5, it's 3, it becomes 0 because we wanted to run it down. So, okay, let us test again. So let's just create another invoice and create a new sale. This time, let's have it as a cash without a customer. And let me just add an item and then let's change the pricing. Um, let's have this. Okay, so 74. So when you go right here, it doesn't change. So when you actually go, when you select cash, it actually rounded up to 70 instead of previously, if we did not check the option to always round down, it should show 75, but then we actually selected round down, so it's now becoming 70. So we tender it, it showed due, but when you click on finish, it became 0. All right, and you can select whatever number that you wanted to round to. It's either like 5, 10, it's either 5, 10, 15, 25. So it depends on you guys, and then you can just change it under the invoice setup and then under the invoice tender rounding. So I believe that will be all for the live demonstration. But before we proceed with the question and answer, I would just like to inform you guys that we do have resources available. We have the help center, and wherein all available resources are listed there, and you can access it at windwardsoftware.com/help. And we also have the customer care portal wherein you can search our knowledge base and you can submit and track support tickets. And you can access that at support.windwardsoftware.com. We also have Windward Learning Academy, which will spin up new employees, and it has lesson-based topics, and you can access it at academy.windwardoncloud.com. And aside from that, we also have Windward Professional Services. So for this, you can get guidance from one of our professional services specialists if you wanted like an in-depth um, information on, let's say, for example, POS assessment, inventory assessment, or accounting assessment. So you can just go to windwardsoftware.com/professional-services, or you can contact your account manager for a quote or call at 1-800-663-5750. And other than that, we also have emergency support. So the following situations qualify for emergency support, which consists of entire system down, unable to take payment, cannot log in into System 5, or recovering from a power outage. So you can access, or you could actually report that under windwardsoftware.com/emergency. And the last will be the webinar archives. So you can access the uh, previous webinars or previously recorded events under windwardsoftware.com/webinars, and you can also sign up for future webinars on that website. So yep, so that will be all. If you do have questions, it will be time for the questions and answers.
Excellent. We don't have any questions in yet, so you must have done a really great job of explaining. If there's anything that you guys would like to know before we end our presentation, please enter it into the question box now. We'll give it a couple more minutes, but if nothing comes to your mind now, you can always email support@windwardsoftware.com or webinars@windwardsoftware.com, and we can get the answers for you. All right, well, nothing's coming in. We won't take up too much more of your time then, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Annabelle, for your presentation. It was very informative. Our next webinar is on March 23rd, and we'll be discussing pack size, so that will be a great one as well. All right, so thank you for joining us. You guys have a great afternoon. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everyone.